Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Toomer Talks Show. I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently than how I normally do without my introduction. I'm just simply going to jump right into it because this is a topic that is very, um, I guess, very significant to me. I'm going to talk to you about how I lost 107 pounds and pretty much give you step by step of what I did. And the reason I'm going to do that, I'm going to first tell you how I got to the point where I needed to lose 100 pounds. And then I'm going to tell you how I reversed it. Now, I started my process 25 years ago. I have actually lost weight in bits and spurts, which is exactly what weight loss really is. And I've never gained any of it back. And so that's the key. It's not enough to lose weight. Um, it's also important that you don't gain it back. And mainly because, like I said before, weight loss in and of itself is not all that important. It's not the weight that's important, it's the fat that's actually important because that's what actually adversely affects our health. So, you've all heard me talk a lot about stress and what stress can do. And so, having gone through school, first undergraduate school, then medical school, then residency, then marriage, then 2 children in 3 years, I gained a significant amount of weight. And to the point where I then ended up a type 2 diabetic, but I was on insulin. It was the only way I could keep my blood sugars under control. But after my daughter was born, my second daughter was born, I went into congestive heart failure mainly because my heart was probably strained for years because of my obesity, but also because of the stress and strain of school and life and all the other things. And so, um, and the reason I'm smiling is because I'm saying hello. I'm just looking at all the greetings. So, hello, Marcia. Hello, Sherry, Loretta, and Sharon and Denise. Thank you for coming in and listening. So, um, the biological impact of stress on my system meant that I ended up gaining a lot of weight. I ended up diabetic, and then I had congestive heart failure. I was 36 years old. So you can imagine how frightening that was. So I decided that I needed to do something, primarily get my diabetes under control. But unfortunately, at the time, my heart was so fragile that nobody wanted to touch me. No doctors wanted to touch me. So I said, well, maybe if I tried losing weight, I could do something and at least put less work on my heart. And so again, no one would touch me. So I ended up creating my own program. My husband and I started working very, very closely um, and studied. We studied what weight gain is, why it's gained, and how to lose it, and how to reverse diabetes. And essentially, weight gain for many people is on the exact same continuum as diabetes development. And so you treat them in the exact same way. So by getting diabetes under control, I lost weight. By getting my weight under control, my diabetes reduced. And it started this nice cycle. And basically, what it was, and with diabetes and even with weight gain, especially metabolic weight gain, which is what most people have, it can be controlled meal to meal. And essentially, carbohydrates, managing carbohydrates are the way to do it. Now, but in a way that's not extreme. Ketogenic diets are extreme version of that. It's not sustainable. So the way we did it was that instead of trying to drop my carbohydrates, we just massively increased my protein. And so by increasing my protein, it automatically, by percentage, dropped my carbohydrates. I still ate the same amount. I just ate more protein in my whole meal. And that's essentially how I did it. It wasn't even anything fancy. It was just looking at a plate and making sure that most of my plate was protein and vegetables, and I still ate my carbs. I even ate dessert if I wanted to. And essentially, what happened is that I lost 60 pounds rather quickly. Now, the problem what we ran into is that because of my heart, I could not exercise. And so eventually what happens, your body hits homeostasis, meaning that it gets used to where you are and it keeps you there. And so once I lost that initial 60 pounds, now I'm 5 feet tall and I was somewhere around 230 pounds, probably heavier because I stopped weighing myself at a certain point. And so I initially lost about 60 pounds, and then my body stopped. Now, mind you, 230 minus 60 left me at about 170, 180 pounds around there. At 5 feet tall, I was still significantly overweight, and I was still having problems from being overweight. I was still diabetic. However, I was able to come off insulin, but I still was diabetic. My joints hurt. My heart was still hadn't fully recovered. And so, but it was really, really hard to maintain it. It took daily focus to maintain that weight loss. Losing it seemed relatively easy, but only up to a point. And then keeping it off was a little more difficult, especially not being able to exercise. And so, and I just stayed that way for years and years. And then GLP-1s came in. And like I said, I was 36 years old. GLP-1, I started, I think, somewhere, it would have been 12, 13 years ago. Victoza became more widely used. And I started that. And suddenly trying to keep my weight off became really easy. Suddenly not craving carbs, not reacting to stress, not gaining weight every single time I did stress, suddenly stopped. And then when Ozempic came out, even more so, it became even easier. And then when Mounjaro came out, even easier still. And my diabetes is very well controlled. My initial A1C, for anyone who understands diabetes, anything over 6.5 is diabetes. I started at 8.5. I'm now at 5.3. I started somewhere around the 230 range in weight. I'm 5 feet tall. Like I said, I probably went higher. And now I'm somewhere in like 112, 113. And I can tell you that it's not biologically. I mean, my heart is much healthier. My joints don't hurt. I am able to move around without getting winded. I feel very healthy. However, the psychosocial part of weight loss is where we often struggle. And in that struggle, what happens is we often sabotage ourselves because we're not used to seeing what we're looking at in the mirror. And that was my biggest struggle, is that I liked myself plump. I liked myself round. I thought I looked younger when my face was a little rounder. And then all of a sudden that started to go away and I didn't like it. So this is long before what they call Ozempic face. Anyone who loses weight is going to lose fat in their face. And so that's just, the privilege we have of getting healthy. And just like flabby skin is the privilege we have of getting healthy, having cellulite and wrinkles and all the other things that happen as your skin gets looser are all the privileges we enjoy from having gotten healthy. And that's how I saw it. But I can tell you, the biological stuff is relatively easy, especially now that we have GLP-1 medications. A lot of people say, oh, that's cheating. It's the easy way out. No, it's not. It's treating a chronic disease. It's the same reason why you can take a 20-year-old who can exercise and a 50-year-old who exercises. They can do the exact same exercise and their body reacts differently to that exercise. You can take a 20-year-old and have them eat something. You can take a 50-year-old, have them eat something, the exact same thing. And what happens to that food in their body is different. You can take two 20-year-olds and it's different because it is such a genetic connection to how we process food in our bodies. And for most of us, it is that we have some type of metabolic issue. We have a gene that got switched on either because of stress, because of genes, because of pregnancy, because of menopause, because of polycystic ovary syndrome. And if you are someone who gains weight very, very easily, but has a really hard time losing it, no matter how much you work out, no matter how much you pay attention to what you're eating, and you still are struggling, you more than likely have what's a chronic metabolic issue that is gone undiagnosed, that is making your body more susceptible to making fat out of food rather than fuel. And I was definitely one of those people. I'm still one of those people. But given GLP-1 medications, it has made it so that I can maintain my 107-pound weight loss without any problems. Even when I get stressed, my body, yes, I can feel the fatigue. I can feel sometimes a little bit of the inflammation, but I don't have the long-term adverse effects anymore. And so that is how I lost my 100 pounds. I focused on protein and fiber, and in the first 60 pounds, I maintained that for years and years and years. Little with, a lot of focus and a lot of intentional behavior and activities. But then it was when GLP-1s came out that it became easy. And it's ever since. And that's one of the reasons why I'm such a proponent of GLP-1 medications, because I know what they can do. I know how life-changing they can be. And so I know it's not not really so anyway, that is my story, and that's what I wanted to talk to people about, because I get a lot of people who get discouraged because they're like, "Oh, I've lost weight and I'm not losing anymore." You may stay that way for a little while before your body decides it's going to change, before you have to change something to make your body react. And for me, it was medication. For some people, it's muscle. For other people, it's maybe, excuse me, not eating a particular food item that their body reacts to. But weight loss is this. You go up and down and up and down. In my case, I went down and then I stayed for years and years and years, and then I went down again. And every single person's different. Marcia said, I started having weight gain as well, where I too had a heart attack and had to go on a weight loss program. Was hard at first, but I got some off and still going. But without diabetes, yay. Yes, I mean, again, another reason why I'm also a huge proponent of GLP-1 medications, because it did help my heart. I was in congestive heart failure. I still have congestive heart failure, but my ejection fraction, which is what we use to measure how well your heart is working, has improved considerably. It actually improved and went back down, and then was put on a GLP-1, and it improved again, and it hasn't changed since. So again, and now we know that GLP-1 medications reduce inflammation, including the small vessels that feed our heart, that feed our kidneys, that feed our eyes and our intestines and our brain, and is protective in all those ways. And so it's apart from just because the metabolic process that makes us gain weight is the same metabolic process that attacks our small vessels, that makes our cholesterol go up, that makes our body get inflamed and get small vessels clogged. So when you reverse that with the medication, with or without the medication, but I just happen to know that many people need the medication. So I talk about it a lot just because there's so much fear and there's so much misinformation that I just wanted to reiterate that again. Denise says, I'm on 5 milligrams of Zepbound. Started weight was 217. I'm now 143. How do you get your body to set at your current weight? Meaning, how do you stop losing weight? It really depends on your height. Your body kind of goes where it wants to go when it feels healthy. And if 143 is a healthy weight for your height, then that's where your body will try to stay. But if your body feels healthier, like your joints or inflammation, or if there's a metabolic process that's still being treated, it's going to reflect in your weight. Even though your weight is not being treated, it's treating the metabolic process that's causing weight gain or fat production. So if your body's continuing to lose, then what that means is that the medication is still actually doing some work. 5 milligrams is a very low dose of Zepbound. The maximum dose for Zepbound is 15 milligrams. So if your body's still reacting to 5 milligrams, that means it's still treating something. And, for I actually have a picture here of where I started. This is actually the only picture I have of me when this was right after my daughter was born, a few days right before I went into the hospital with congestive heart failure. It's the only picture, and mainly because my sister-in-law took it without my noting it. But also, I just didn't allow my picture to get taken. And unfortunately, now I regret that because I don't have a whole lot of photos with me and my baby. That's the only one I have, actually. But that was the beginning. And that was my wake-up call when I went into the hospital and I had to do something to essentially save my life. And so, but what that did is it led me on a path where I help people go after the cause of their issues. Weight, like I said, is a symptom. It's a symptom of other things that are happening. And so when you go after those other things, your weight follows. And that's what makes it easy. If you just focus on weight and weight only, it's difficult because weight is really arbitrary and it's still a symptom of something else. And so you're going after you're not treating the cause, you're treating the symptom. And if it's like saying, if you have a hammer and someone keeps hitting your hand with a hammer, and instead you're like, my hand hurts, so I'm going to take Tylenol, I'm going to take ibuprofen, but you're still hitting your hand with the hammer. Yeah, it may be able to stop some of the pain, but you're not going after the cause of why the pain is there. If you remove the hammer, then it stops the pain and you don't have to do anything else. That's essentially what GLP-1 medications do. They go after the cause. They go after the hammer that's causing pain and they remove it. And that's why it's not cheating. And because it is an actual metabolic disease that's being treated. And it's really important to reiterate that. Now, there are ways you can lose weight without medication. Like I said, I lost my first 60 pounds without medication. I lost another 45, 50 after with medication. But I can tell you that with the medication, it was so much easier than without. And the other is that you hit, like I said, your body hits sort of a level of homeostasis and it just stays there, whether you're healthy or not. And that's sort of what happened to me. I got to this place where I wasn't really all that healthy. I was healthier, but I hadn't gotten healthy yet. And so with the advent of medications, I was able to do a whole lot more after that. Sherry said, when you only focus on weight, you're focusing on the symptom, not the cause. Exactly. And weight loss options are not cheating. Different methods work for different people. Well, this is the thing. There's some universal metabolic, biological facts that are the same for everyone. Fat is produced in the body in the exact same microbiological, biochemical way for everybody. It just is. And there's no getting around that. That's just the truth. The difference is some people's biological and microbiological and biochemical process is far more sensitive. And so they take the same amount of food and they turn it into fat, where someone takes that food and turns it into fuel. However, the chemical makeup, the biochemical reaction, all of that is exactly the same for both people. It's just that one person is more sensitive than the other person. And that's the only difference. And so the reason why some people can exercise and they can, watch what they eat and lose weight, many of us can do that. But the question is, how much exercise does it take? How much, restriction of food does it take? How much, how difficult does it have to be? Every single person's is different. And so if you may have two people with a headache, but one person has a headache, One person has a headache because of their sinuses. Another person has a headache because of eye strain. Another person has a migraine. They all have a headache, but how you address that headache would be different for each person. And and so that is essentially what metabolic processes are. We are people who have migraines. So we can't treat it in the same way as someone who has a headache just because they're tired or because they're a little dehydrated. It's far more serious. It's more medical, and that's why GLP-1 medications work. And they cannot work in the way that they do to help people lose, 50, 100, 150, 250. I know someone who's lost over 400 pounds. You can't do that unless there's something underlying. And it's not that hard. It's just understanding the cause, going after the cause, and then focusing on that cause for the rest of your life, because it is something that you have to focus. Your genes don't change. Your genetic makeup stays the same. So it's something you've got to understand forever. Sherry said, thank you for sharing your experience. It's very helpful in understanding this issue. Well, you're welcome. And I realize, actually, what spearheaded this? I was saying something to someone about, being overweight and having obesity. And I said, and she looked at me and she's like, we? What do you mean we? You're tiny. And I'm like, no, I mean, it's like once you're a diabetic, you're always a diabetic. Once you have obesity, you always have obesity. My obesity is just controlled. I still have obesity. If I weren't on medication, if I stopped paying attention to my protein, if I stopped, managing my carbohydrates, if I stopped paying attention to my fiber, if I stopped paying attention to my stress level, my sleep patterns, I would go right back where I was. So the underlying cause of my obesity is still there. I just have it controlled. I am still a diabetic. I just have it controlled. It's like having hypertension and taking medication and that hypertension being controlled. You still have hypertension. It's just now controlled. And so that is essentially what, and this is why I wanted to share my story, was because, so that people could understand that, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a diagnosis. It's no judgment. It doesn't mean you're good or bad. It's just a diagnosis, just like any other. Except for we can treat it. And my worry is that people are afraid of treating because of all the negativity around people's attitudes about obesity, not and they're projecting that onto the medication, or they're projecting it onto a process. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how we can lose weight and why we should, who've never, ever had to struggle with a weight issue ever in their lives. Excuse me. In their lives. And so, and that's why I wanted to talk a little about this today, because there's just a lot of stuff going on, and I've been hearing a lot of comments, and I've been getting a lot of messages. And so I thought, this is time. Arsha said, you were advised by my doctor to continue to follow the chart I was given because of my heart issues. Yeah, I mean, heart and weight and fat production and fat deposit all go together. I mean, and the other thing that happens is fat creates an inflammatory process. Making fat in our body can be a result of an inflammatory process, and the fat in of itself can cause inflammation in our bodies. Small vessel disease and heart attacks, brain strokes, eye disease, blindness, microvascular blindness, kidney disease are all related to inflammation. And therefore, if you have inflammation, then all parts of your body gets affected. Well, fat causes inflammation, and that's the only reason why it's important to get rid of it. there's otherwise it wouldn't matter. If it didn't cause health issues, it really wouldn't matter, but it does. And it causes those same health issues, a vicious cycle with metabolic problems, fat production, and then end organ disease. And so prevention would be to, start a process that lowers your stress, that builds your muscle, that maximizes your protein and fiber, that gives you good sleep. And in the process, what happens, your body just kind of goes where it goes when it's healthy. And this isn't about being thin. This is about being healthy and letting your body go where it goes. You can be healthy at any size. So it seems like obesity has some of the stigma and misinformation as a topic of mental illness. It does. And for a couple of reasons. One, mental illness like depression, anxiety feeds into weight gain, but then weight gain in and of itself can cause depression and anxiety. The other is a lot of the medications being used, like antipsychotic medications used for bipolar, medication used for depression, can cause weight gain, unfortunately. And so sometimes that creates this vicious cycle of weight gain, change in mood, weight gain, change in mental status. And so it's really important to pay attention to one's mental status when embarking on a health journey, because the biology is easy. It's really the psychosocial that's more difficult, navigating people's opinions, navigating, social interactions, navigating the change in your appearance and how that affects you, navigating, your clothes, your favorite things no longer fitting. Those are all things that have to be negotiated and dealt with during a weight loss process. And they all may sound like good things, but for many people, it can be very difficult. Very difficult. Do you have any questions for me before I go? I know I've kind of been talking in circles and I've been talking a lot, but like I said, this is as a result of a conversation I had earlier, and I wanted to share some things because I think there still is a lot of misinformation, and I don't mind correcting it. So if you have questions, or if you have people that you hear saying or doing things that don't quite sound right, you can send them my way and I'll explain things. You can have them join my Facebook group, or you can have them watch my videos. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch my videos there. And because that's the best, information, education, that's the best way of countering the way people feel. And I think this is an important topic for just an important topic for health. Yonda said, you had a foundation of lifestyle changes prior to meds. How hard is it for patients to commit to these changes after meds? Now, the thing is, and this is, I had a lifestyle change. It wasn't a lifestyle change out of, it was out of desperation. And when I say lifestyle change, it was actually almost death. And one of the things I'm very cautious about is shaming people into feeling as though relying on medications to correct their chronic disease is somehow not appropriate. The only time we harp on lifestyle changes when it comes to a chronic disease is when it's obesity. We don't hear the same about diabetes. We don't hear the same about hypertension. We don't hear the same about migraines, thyroid issues, any other issues, joint issues, back issues. We might say, if you lost weight, it would help your knee pain or your back pain. If you didn't eat sugar, it may help with your headaches. But we never, ever tell people that you have to make lifestyle changes first before your medication. It's only with obesity that we have these type of questions or even these type of discussions. And yes, lifestyle changes are really important. They enhance medication. So what I always say is what we've always done. You correct the disease, you fix the disease, and then it makes it so much easier to then make the changes that are necessary to maintain equilibrium, maintain homeostasis, and become less dependent on the medication. Um, and so, yes, I was able to lose weight with lifestyle changes, but I white knuckled it pretty much the whole time until GLP-1 medications came out. It was very difficult. It was not easy. And partly it was because I was a, what do you call it? I couldn't do anything for myself. So I had no choice. And my husband was not an enabler. So he made sure that, so I couldn't cook, I couldn't do anything. So I really was at the mercy of other people, and other people just basically took my health into their hands. And I was very grateful for that. But, I don't feel like it is that committing to lifestyle change is a requirement for treatment. I think it's better, obviously. I think that it's preferable, but I don't think anybody should be shamed for not doing it. And not sustainable. So without meds may have regained. Absolutely. You're going to regain it because the disease that's being treated is stopped not being treated anymore. If you're hypertensive and you're controlled with medication and you stop the medication, your hypertension, your blood pressure goes up. Same thing with weight. If your weight's being controlled by a medication because your metabolic disease is being controlled, you remove the medication, the weight's going to come back. It is, and I think that is the issue. When we stop looking at obesity as weight and start seeing it as what it really is, it is a chronic metabolic dysregulation. And when you consider it a chronic metabolic dysregulation, then all the other things that kind of go into how you treat and regard chronic disease is exactly the same as you would for any other. It just is. And so, medication, the only reason that we even have these discussions now is because we actually have a medication that corrects that metabolic process. When blood pressure medications, I remember when metformin first came out and how it could control diabetes in a way that no other medication could. It was the miracle drug at the time that it came out for diabetes. And getting diabetes under control, nobody calls it cheating. Nobody cares if, we do care, but I'm just saying it's the conversations are very different when we're talking about obesity treatment versus any other chronic disease. And that's why I'm highly sensitive to it, because as someone who was, morbidly obese at one point, I just remember the conversations. It was still put on me. It kept being put on me. Why aren't you doing this? Why haven't you done that? What is the reason that this hasn't happened? When, but no, very little discussion of this is why this is happening and let us help you control it. And now we can have those discussions because we do have something that can control it. Do you recommend using a starting dose of 2.5 Zepbound for maintenance, or is sticking to 5 minutes better? It just depends on the person. Every single person is different. Every single person is different. That is where the art of medicine comes in when it comes to maintenance. And the reason is because it really just depends. I talk about homeostasis, and basically what homeostasis is, your body kind of gets to a point where it takes the least amount of energy to maintain itself. And for every person, that amount of energy changes depending on who that person is, how they are, how much muscle they've got, how tall are they, what are their genetic makeup. And so every single person is different when it comes to how to maintain that homeostasis. And for some people, so like for me, for example, I'm also diabetic, but I I've dropped my dose. I still take my medication once a week, but I don't take as much. I dropped the dose. At some point, I'll probably drop it some more. And then now that I'm through menopause, because menopause can kind of disrupts all of that. And so now that I'm through menopause, then now I can start playing around with it a little bit to see how far out I can spread my medications. How low of a dose can I go before my metabolic issues start rearing their ugly head again? And it's the only reason, and as diabetics, we have a nice way of determining whether something's happening or not. We just haven't afforded that same level of measurement to people who are pre-diabetic or pre-diabetic, like have insulin resistance. We know polycystic ovary syndrome causes insulin resistance, and we know that it causes all sorts of issues with their metabolic system. We just don't have really good way of testing it, but we know it's there, and we know that GLP-1s help maintain it and reverse it. So I know that was a roundabout answer, but yeah. Cynthia was like, thank you, Aunt Cynthia, for being here. Any other questions? Now, one of the other thing that, just to go back to lifestyle, when you have a metabolic issue, when you have metabolic dysregulation, your muscles are competing against that. And so if left untreated, left unaddressed, your muscles are never going to be as efficient as they should be, because your body's constantly trying to pull fuel away from your muscles. And so often what can happen, and I've done this many times with people, I start them on a low dose of the medication so that their muscles are no longer competing. And then when working out, their muscles then are much more efficient in developing, much more efficient in building, and therefore they're less likely to be dependent on the medication after that. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. And I've seen it happen, and I've done it with people in the past. But again, it's sort of like having a really, really, really bad pain that makes your blood pressure go up. And if we keep treating the blood pressure, but we're not treating the pain, the blood pressure, we're just throwing medication at the blood pressure and not at what's causing it. And this is sort of the exact same thing. We can throw whatever we want at the what we think is at the result, but if we don't go after the cause of that, it's just so much harder to correct. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you do have questions later, you can go to the video and put the questions in the comments, and I'll answer them. Or you can send me an email at help@drtoomer.com. That's monitored by me and by my assistant. And so if you have questions, you can send them there. If you have topics you'd like me to talk about, you can send them there. And then you can always follow me on Facebook as well, where I post a lot of things and, provide a lot of information. So, all right. Well, it was great talking to you, and thank you for coming. And like I said, every Tuesday right here, Dr. Toomer Talks on Tuesdays. And I didn't bring my introduction this time because I just wanted to jump right into it. And so I will see you next week. So thank you for enlightening introduction and for being so open and sharing. Have a good week. See you next week. Thank you, Marsha. And like I said, it's just really important. The other reason why I share quite a bit is because I want the stigma to go away. I just remember too well sitting in my car crying at the end of a doctor's appointment. And I just don't want anyone else to have to go through that. because there are lots of reasons. And also, the other is I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure 2 weeks after I went to the doctor. I went saying I'm short of breath. I was tired. I couldn't lie flat. I knew all the symptoms, and I kept saying, and I kept being told it was my weight that was the cause, when in fact it was my heart. And I don't want anyone to have their any symptom dismissed just because they're living in a larger body. All right. So you all have a good evening. Let me see. Is prediabetes and insulin resistance the same thing? They're on the same continuum. So insulin resistance is here, and insulin resistance causes prediabetes, and insulin resistance causes type 2 diabetes. It's just that it's not measured low at the low end of the continuum. However, weight starts being gained at the low end of the continuum and all the way through. So insulin resistance could sort of like be considered pre-diabetes, then pre-diabetes, then diabetes, all on the same continuum. So it's like I said, it's like having a headache versus having a migraine. They're all headaches, but it's just there's measures of it. So, but they're all metabolic issues. They're all metabolic dysregulations, and they're all treated in the same way by reducing stress, building muscle, and using medication when necessary or when able or when appropriate. All right. You all have a good evening. Good night.